Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, which means a little bit of current affairs mixed into your potions. A little bit of pumi, mashicho mixed into your potions. A little bit of fun and some serious looks at some of the things that are going on around us. Because hell, it does need a serious look, right?
Am I the serious look person? Am I the serious
No,
look person? Oh, okay.
it's just that on Thursdays we're a little more adult than we are the rest of the time, I suppose. I mean, if we're ever adults, like that.
I was just, I was actually just saying to Ryan about the volume on the headphones that I remember my mom always used to say, "Can you turn down the volume? Turn down the
Mm,
music." And now
now
I
it's
find
you.
myself, I have to, no, actually, I hold it back. I hold it back when Gareth was playing his music. I won't say turn down the
Um,
volume. I hear it in my head and then I think I'm not that person.
right. But now you are, whether you like it or not. Uh-huh.
Turn down the volume. It's kind of like when you're getting lost. You know, when you're getting lost, you have to turn down the volume.
Right. Yeah. I saw some pictures of our former president. In fact, it was like a video from somewhere in KZ, and he was dressed up in all his Zulu regalia, and he was dancing and you know,
New pictures or old pictures?
no new ones. He's gearing up. He's warming up for a fight. He looks like he's getting ready for battle. This is an
We are
old
all
man. It's an old man, but he's dancing around like someone who's, I don't know, in his early 30s. And you got to admire that energy. It's just I suppose if you fight for your life every
it,
day of it, it keeps you young.
no, you know, the thing that fascinates me every time we kind of look at him and contrast him with our current president
Yeah.
is his absolute joy at life, right? So the
Mm.
laugh that you're
Yeah.
playing,
Right.
the dancing, the vigor, the showing up, even with all the pressure, even with all the people and the Zuma must go and the marchers and our current president doesn't have the same kind of steel resolve. I mean, he doesn't even take questions. He doesn't take media questions. He doesn't, shows up and gets whisked away. He's just
I asked I had a tantrum yesterday.
Absolutely.
you.
I had a tantrum because because I suddenly thought, like, what is the current president of the Republic of South Africa doing every day? Like, is he sitting at home watching Netflix? Is
Because we
he
don't even see him taking his walks anymore. Remember, he used to take the
People say
walk.
he's busy. I don't think he's doing anything. At least the former one, you knew he was up to no good, but you could tell he was busy. Like I almost admire the fact that he was busy rather than he was hiding from us or trying his best to do as little as possible, which is the impression I get from this one. If this one isn't like stuffing money into a sofa somewhere, which is about as crooked as you can get, then he's smiling and pretending everything's great, but he's doing fuck all, fuck all. Mhm. At least with that one, we knew what we were in for.
Gareth.
And he could
Hey,
dance, sing, and he would charm the ladies. This
spare a
one's got as
thought.
much. The
Spare a
current
thought,
president
Gareth,
got as much
for
charm as
all
the
the people, for all the people who supported Cyril financially as
my
well.
God. Imagine
All the
being one of
people who believed so much
them.
in
Mhm.
the new president, in the then, you
Gave him
know?
money to bribe other people with. And you're thinking to yourself now, what a piss poor investment. I would have been better off
Or
buying the
is it?
shittiest stock on the JSE. Is it?
Or
Of
is
course it
it?
is. Because
Is
it's
it
a
a poor investment?
yeah. Tell
Really?
me it isn't. Prove to me it
Oh,
isn't.
Gareth, if you got an IPP approval, if you now have in your grubby little paws
Mm.
uh, the approval to become an independent power producer, I think it was not a shitty investment. I saw yesterday FNB made an announcement that they are now going to be giving loans to people who have accounts with them or home loans with them. They will be approving loans for solar power solutions. If you're now taking an extra 150,000 Rand loan with FNB to get solar power in your house, I don't think FNB is doing all too shabby.
Look,
Are they?
I still think there's got to be a part of you that goes, "What a lame duck," right?
I don't know. No.
You think
You,
people are so they're just so what's the word for it? So venal that they'll do anything for
you,
money. It's just
you.
money. Right? That's all
Fino,
it is.
it's a big word for a Thursday morning.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. All right, so let's get into some things here. While we're talking about the former Zulu president of the country and the current one, the Zulu word, you want to bring this into common usage among all South Africans because you reckon this is the perfect word to describe what is going on in South Africa right now, from pop culture to politics. Kuningi, which means too much, right?
It's a lot.
A lot,
Kuning
yeah.
nje, kuning. There's a lot happening. So kuningi, for those who want to know how to spell it, Kuni
Mhm, mhm,
Ningi, NGI, kuningi. It's a
mhm.
lot. Like, and it's the perfect word because if we just do a rundown of the past 7 days,
Yeah.
on the loose, an escaped rapist murderer is on the run somewhere around Santon and whatever.
Hmm.
And there's a dead body, as yet unidentified. This morning at 9 o'clock, there'll be a press conference with G4S and Department of Correctional Services to give us feedback. Remember that they've spent almost the whole of last week and this week saying they did an investigation. The man that died, this is G4S, the man that was the dead body found in the cell is indeed Thabo Bester. And here we are. Is it Thabo Bester or not? There's a doctor who may or may not be a real doctor, depending on when you ask the Health Professional Councils of South Africa.
Dr. Nandipa. Hmm.
Dr. Nandi is also on the run. So she dropped off her kids at school and never came back. She just,
She's poor children. Who's got them now?
their dad.
Hmm.
They're safe and they're with their dad.
If
But
if
can
if
you,
if G4S is to be believed, why would she have like cut and run if he's
so
dead?
who's this guy? No, but who's this guy she's on the run with then? If that's,
That's it. That's it. That's what I'm saying. And like this doesn't make any sense.
but also what is happening with this woman? Why would you give up your kids, your family, your profession, your supposedly very lucrative practice and go like Bonnie and Clyde?
I do not know the first thing. See, I had to have this story explained to me by Lebang on Tuesday because I actually didn't even know what was going on here. I was so confused by all the different media reports and the fact that there's this dead person, but now it's not a dead person. Someone spotted him in Santon like a year ago. And it's not
No,
clear
2
what's
weeks
going on
ago,
here.
3 weeks ago. He was
Oh,
spotted at Woolworths in Santon 3 weeks ago. And that's when it all
oh my God.
unraveled,
Oh my God.
including a Facebook post by her brother. So two
And
weeks ago,
now she's taken out a hit on her brother as well.
so he's in hiding. He is
Yeah.
now in hiding. There's a spokesperson
I'm sorry.
who who's doing all the talking and then they were the, so all sorts of things have then crept up. Moji have a recording of somebody who says he's a prisoner in the prison with Thabo Bester, or whether he's alive or dead, and just talking about all of what happened with Thabo Bester while he was in prison, because he apparently ran this huge multi-million rand scam media business. You saw those videos, right? Of
Yeah, so
everybody singing happy birthday for him, and he was like in prison.
no,
Like,
it's
do you hear me? Kuningi.
Koningi. You're right. That's what we're dealing with a
So,
lot.
2 weeks ago, was it, that we spoke with Mr. Herman Mashaba about the lie detector tests that they put
Hey,
some
at
of.
least at least they fired those guys. They fired them, and
Were
now there's
they
a new.
fired?
No, they were fired. Now,
Well,
you know, you
because I
you
thought it was interesting.
I know you're not a big fan of Herman, and you nailed him. And last week, Kanthan nailed Helen, and this is good. This is why we
No,
do the burning platform. But they fired them. How
so
how many times in this country do you ever hear about someone getting fired?
I was intrigued to see that the new mayor of Tshwane won by exactly 7 votes. So I wondered if it was the same 7 councillors who were put
Probably,
through the lie detector tests.
probably because what are they called? Action SA. What Action SA said is that these people were bribed, and they were either threatened and bribed, or one of those two, to vote to keep from letting the DA take the mayorship. So if they got rid of them, good. We want to grease the. I live in Tshwane, all right? I live here. I want a fucking mayor so that I can have power, and I can have water, and I can have rubbish collected, and I can have my streets fixed, and I can have like the place tight. Let me tell you something, Pumi. I drove through the center of Pretoria a little while ago, probably about what, 3-4 weeks ago, because I had to get to the other side of Pretoria to collect something. I never go that side. I drove along roads, past the union buildings and so on, where this is the center of our country. This is the supposedly the administrative capital of South Africa.
The administrative heart
The
of
president
our republic.
You've got government buildings all over the place. The place looks like it's Mogadishu. It is foul and dirty and wretched and ugly. And I drove past a school, and I thought, these poor children that were coming out of the school, some of them were dressed very smartly. Most of them were dressed very smartly in their school uniforms. And I thought, you poor little bastards,
Wow.
having to grow up in this filth, because they looked smart, but their surroundings were messy, and there was grass growing and weeds growing. And I thought, this is not the capital city of a country. And what got me fired up yesterday was that someone asked King Philippe and his wife of Belgium, how was your trip to South Africa, your state visit, in inverted commas? And they said, it was absolute chaos. And I thought,
Really?
yeah, and for someone, heads of state don't say that kind of thing. They keep it to themselves. It must have been so fucking bad that these people, who are used to being, bowed and scraped to and all that stuff. So I'm not into that at
And
all.
everything is planned, right? They
Everything's
don't go
tricky.
anywhere that's not on a. It's planned, it's timed,
You've got
that's why
got
it's never
a whole
chaotic.
department. You've got a whole protocol department at the union buildings that supposedly takes care of these things. It makes sure that there's an itinerary, that they're put up in a nice place, that they're constantly, being looked after, that they're meeting all the people that we want them to meet. The whole point of a state visit is to engender good relations so that we can do more trade together. We can, do all kinds of things that'll be beneficial to both countries. And I know a lot of it is just appearances, but we didn't even see any of that. I didn't even know they were here until someone told me. So,
I did see them when they were here.
so if they said it was chaotic, and I see the city of Pretoria, people, just get people who can do stuff. It's becoming an embarrassment. It's, again,
That's
Uning,
very irritating.
it's a
Kuningi,
lot.
Baba.
It's a fucking mess. Clean up.
There
I
is
want this mayor must come on the burning platform. This what is his name? Celia something. Celia.
Celia Brink.
There we go.
I would love the mayor to come on.
Yeah.
I would love the mayor to come on. And I see this morning Mangaung is also um, on the edge of falling apart with possibly 15 by-elections coming up,
Mm,
because people are leaving their parties. And
mm,
and this is the other Gunengi, right? So after all of that, after the EFF and the ANC went on and on and on about Action SA and their lie detector tests, lo
mhm.
and behold, this is why Mangaung is probably going to have 15 by-elections coming up. The ANC is now putting their councillors in that area through lie detector tests, apparently.
Well, we've got to go to
What?
this. Elon Chief Twat says, I drove through the CBD yesterday. It was so clean. This is Cape Town I'm talking about. Yes. Yes, because Cape Town is. It is run well. It is not run piss poorly like the rest of the country. All right, but let's not get into this too soon because we've got the burning platform later on. You'll be pleased to know that both Pumi and Kanthan are ready to shoot shots across the bow of whoever comes on. And this morning we do have an interesting discussion with Gabriel Crouse, we haven't had for ages. He's, of course, a writer and analyst at the IRR. And he's going to be talking about election research, which is your favorite subject, Pumi. You want to know all about this. So we'll look into that.
I was at the IEC presentation yesterday.
Ah, you see how you are such a good burning platform nerd. You do this. Pumi does the groundwork for all of us. Then we come in here and we just listen.
I can't wait. I can't wait to hear what Gabriel thought. It's interesting research.
At one point, you can't believe. I couldn't understand English. I needed interpreters.
Right.
And I hated that position. And I said, I want to study. And I studied. And I can produce no certificate. Absolutely.
All right, well. Stop nonsense. Stop nonsense. All right.
We need our T-shirts.
apparently you were listening to the show on Monday and you thought it was funny that we were talking about that you need to have one or two friends who would help you hide a body.
Bring the carpet. That's
Yeah.
a carpet bringer. That's what I call it with my friends. Yeah, the person that brings the carpet to roll up the dead body.
Before we even get into carpets, I need to ask your advice on something. So I've got a cover for my bed. It's like a, what would you call it? It's like a duvet, but it's not. It's like a bedspread, like a cover, right? And it's too big to. I'm asking you because who else am I going to ask for this? I live on my own and I'm a man. I don't know this shit. So how do I wash this thing? Because it needs a wash, but it's too big for my washing machine. Where do I take it?
Take it to the laundry or the dry cleaners, but a laundromat.
They'll be able to do this?
Yeah, take it. So I think a laundromat is your best bet.
All right, it's in the back of my car right now, and it's in a black bag, and it looks like a small body.
But
That's
I have to. But now you don't. Do you know what it's made of? Do you know what the fabric is? Which is why I'm kind of thinking maybe you want to take it to a dry cleaners because they know how to deal with lots of different specialized fabrics.
No, it's not a fancy thing at all. It's just big. It doesn't fit no matter how you try to squeeze it into the washing machine. I don't have like a big industrial size washing machine, so I'm going to do that.
But when you said bedspread, I did think a little bit about my gran. You know, because the bedspreads are those like the knitted stuff, the crocheted. Is it one of those? Okay.
No, it's like a cover. I don't even know how to describe this thing. I mean, Jesus, I'm confused about. I don't know any of this stuff. I'm not very domestic about these things, but now, I've got some practical questions about this. Thank God you've helped me a little bit. So laundromat's probably the best bet, right?
Yeah, laundromats, because they have industrial size washing machines.
Do you know what my favorite new thing is that I've bought, and I bought it last year sometime?
Is it a comforter?
Yeah, it's like I don't know what you'd call it. I don't know what a comforter is.
It's not a duvet.
It's not a duvet, no. It's like a cover that goes on top of everything on
it's
the bed.
Definitely a comforter.
Okay. All right. So do you know what I bought?
So tell me your new favorite thing. Is it an air fryer?
No, because I wasted money on an air fryer, which has been sitting in my kitchen for months without use. I'm bringing it into the studio so that Laban can have it, so that we can finish that conversation. Had enough of it. So I bought this thing last year, one of those high pressure cleaners. Now this, okay. Before we get into like hiding dead bodies, because I know that's something you want to talk about.
Which you need a high pressure cleaner if you have a dead body to hide.
Now this thing is, I love this machine. Now, I haven't been able to put it to good use. I might be able to do this weekend because I've got a bit of time for a change. But this thing is just epic. You plug it into the plug, and then you plug it into the hose pipe, right?
Yeah.
And then what it does is it's got this long sort of, it's about a meter or so. It's got this long spout, and then you use this thing to like clean paving stones or to clean the rims of your car, for example. And
Or
you can
the
adjust.
engine.
Yeah, you can adjust the pressure on it so that it gets all that, like, that filth that just, from months and months of things, because you could spray it off with a hose pipe, it doesn't come off. This thing gets everything off. Apparently, you've got to be really careful where you use it, but I mean, this is something that I'm
This is the
excited.
thing that washes your walls.
Oh my
This
God,
is
I can't wait. I can't tell you how excited I am about this thing. This is what I get excited about in my old age. Oh,
I don't think it's in your old age, Gareth.
Kumi,
We've seen you get excited about cleaning.
oh my God, if you told me about like 10 years ago that you would be excited about high pressure cleaners and you'd ask questions about where to take a comforter, I still don't even know what that is. I'd say to you, what, are you insane?
So you've had it for a year and you're taking it out for its first weekend out this
I'm
weekend.
using it.
Just
That's it. I've been having it.
might have to invite you and your pressure cleaner over to my house.
I'm telling you, this thing's going to make me so popular. Oh, one other quick domestic thing that happened on Sunday last week, there was a dog next door. I think they're new people living next door, and because I saw them moving in, but they moved in. They didn't bring a moving truck. They brought like a couple of buckies and trailers, which immediately makes me a bit nervous, right?
Yeah, because
You know what I
because
mean?
there are big houses in your area there. It's not a
Well,
couple of buckies kind of move, unless they
yeah,
have they're bringing the mid-rand stream of house deco
right.
into your neck of the woods.
That's what I'm worried about, because I saw just like a bunch of plastic garden chairs and like shitty furniture, and I'm like, oh God, these people are moving in next to me. Anyway, on Sunday, I woke up early on Sunday morning for some reason, and there was a dog next door but this dog screams. It didn't bark. It went "Ah!" like it was like it was a person being attacked. And I thought, oh no, oh God, no, this is going to be living next door to me for I mean, it's an old dog, because I looked over the wall to see what it was. I thought there's someone being murdered. And then I saw that this old Jack Russell, but old, it's like one
Oh
ear is
no.
down. No, it's very old, and it doesn't sound very happy. Anyway,
Maybe it won't last long.
well, that was my hope, right? But the good news is, I mean, there's a good news story to this. I think he was just visiting, because
Oh,
I haven't heard it since then. So I think it was just because I actually went over and knocked. Like, I'm not one of those
did you now?
yeah, I'm not one of those irritating. No, but this needed to be dealt with. I mean, if this dog was going to be living next door, and I was hearing this sound and you've got to act quickly, because if you tolerate it for the first week, then things are going to get
Then
much
it's
worse.
tickets. It's tickets for you.
Exactly. And I
And
knocked at the
did
door.
somebody come to the door?
No, there was no one there. So I think actually what they did is like someone else brought their dog here, and they put it there for the night because they'd all gone out somewhere or something. And then the next morning, it was still waiting for them. But they must have come home somewhere in the day, because suddenly it was gone.
Have you seen these
But it's
neighbors? Have you seen these new neighbors actually like clapped eyes on who they are or what they look like?
no, because when they were moving in, it was hard to tell who the actual neighbors were, because there were all these people with buckies and trailers and like movers, and you couldn't really figure out who's who. I don't know if it's white people. I don't know if it's black people. I don't know if they're old. I don't know if they're young. I don't know if they, anything about them. Nothing.
You must ask the security guards.
That's what I'll do.
The security guards know everything.
They know everything. I'll ask
They
them. Good
ask
point.
the
You see,
security guards who they are.
I mean, like most of the time, I don't take any interest in my neighbors, but it's hard to do that when the dog is screaming next door. Ooh, and another thing while we're on these neighborly things. No, because Last week you had to talk about your crazy neighbor.
You're feeling me with the crazy neighbor. Now you see, I am not the crazy one.
So here's the thing. The neighborhood WhatsApp group is usually very boring, but occasionally and strategically I will use it. Okay. So on a Wednesday night, no, last night was Wednesday, Tuesday night, somewhere around 11:30 p.m. Right, I'm in bed, and there's a car like screaming down, but like you can hear almost like drag racing. You know those cars that go those ones, and it's this noisy like drag racing type car, and I can't tell if it's more than one or whatever, but it's on the road right outside the estate here, and I'm thinking,
okay, so outside the estate on the main road,
it's not because in the estate they've built all these stupid bumps, but I'm kind of happy that we've got the bumps than that we don't. Anyway, this dude is driving at like God knows what speeds, but making a hell of a racket at 11:30 p.m. at night, and it's obviously because the one kind of main road outside the gate, you can go down. There are no bumps and circles and things, and this guy is like using this to test out his car.
At 11 in the night.
Yeah, so I said on the neighborhood group, I'm like, does anybody know about these people who are like racing cars late at night? And nobody replies. And then I get one or two private messages from neighbors. They obviously, they're scared to reply on the group, but they'll tell me personally. They're like, oh no, we know who it is. It's like one of the people who live in the estate's kids. And
no.
Yes. So I am now going to I'm going to think carefully and strategically about what the plan is going to be here.
I love the strategically.
I'm going to, and I'm going to out this kid to his parents publicly and like make it embarrassing so he stops doing it.
Why do you think the parents don't know it's him?
I think they're probably those kind of parents who either are pretending they don't know because they're indulging their kid who's spoiled, because it's quite an expensive car for a kid to have, and it's been souped up and all of this stuff. Or they are blissfully ignorant, and they just maybe they're deaf, maybe they don't know what's going on. But I think maybe they're those kinds of parents who are happy to indulge their kid as long as he behaves when he's around them. Then they pretend everything's all right. You know those kind of parents.
Wow. Speaking of those kinds of parents, because this was my other good ningy. Do you know what Luh Twizzys are?
Mm-mm.
On Saturday last week, at Mall of Africa, there was an invasion of young people. Luh Twizzys is what they are called. And it is basically it's a group of teenagers, and it started on TikTok. And I think they organize on TikTok and then all decide where they're gonna like show up.
Right.
And so Mall of Africa last week, Saturday, had an invasion of Luh Twizzys. And then on social media, all these people who had never heard of Luh Twizzys or seen what Luh Twizzys are all went on social media. It was trending for 2 days, Mall of Africa, with the videos of all these kids fighting, just causing general chaos in the mall.
All right, but what are they? Because I still don't know what it is. Are these kids of a certain age? Are they? What do they do?
They are between kind of 13. They're like high school kids, probably between 13 and 18 years old. And they're wealthy kids, or they have parents who are willing to buy them like the super sneakers and the clothes and the whatever. And they are just gangs of kids who are completely out of control. And that's their whole thing, right? Their entire thing is causing chaos. So, of course, they're drinking. They're smoking, whatever, smoking hubblies, smoking
or vaping.
whatever, or vaping. and they are fighting. That's the other thing, is because they're gangs
And
and they come from different schools. Yes, it sounds like chavs, Tyrant. They really do. They're like the South African version of chavs. And on Saturday, because, I suppose Mall of Africa has never had a crowd that big, but like all the videos, there's nowhere to walk because they're everywhere. The escalators are chock-a-block, and then they just start running and causing absolute chaos. They're in the restaurants, they're in the parking lots, they're everywhere, just being
so why
a
doesn't the
huge
mall?
nuisance.
So the mall has security, and they usually have cells, or they certainly have an empty shop or two in the basement or something. They can lock these little fuckers up. They should lock them up in there.
No, I don't think you understand how many they are. You actually so the mall is completely unprepared. They did not see
Rubber
this
bullets,
coming.
tear gas, and cages.
Fucking menaces. These kids are menaces. But apparently on Saturday, a child was stabbed to death in one of the
In this
fights
thing, in this
at the mall.
wow. I mean, if that isn't, please, can we just arrest these children and put them in jail and put the parents in jail as well? Because the parents clearly don't know what the kids are up to. If your son was involved in this shit, I know you would be on top of it.
So obviously on Monday at the office, we had heated discussions about this because I was horrified and mortified, but I also had to think about myself when I was 15, 16 years old. It is the modern day Skotane, that's what I think at least.
Mhm.
And I kept thinking, I don't think my mom knows half the things I got up to when I was 16. And I must be careful because she listens to the show. Now I'm outing myself. But how can you know? If a kid leaves the house and they're kind of, and they're dressed out and they say they're going to the mall and they're going to the movies or whatever, you don't know
Mhm.
that they're going to be a part of a fucking gang.
It's a gang. So you must now punish these gangs, and the parents will know that there's something wrong when their kids aren't there when they come to pick them up, or when their kids don't come home, because they'll go, oh,
But
where's
also,
my kid?
do we pick up our kids or do we just send the Uber? Do we let them take the Uber home?
Either way, when they don't come, maybe the parent will go, something's wrong here. Lock the
Jesus.
whole lot of them up. Open up a cinema, and get enough security guards to throw the whole lot of them. They can't be more than as full as a cinema.
No, they are. They absolutely are. You just please Google it. Google Luh Twizzy, Google Mall of Africa Luh Twizzy's over the weekend. It's
Holy shit.
unbelievable.
How do you even spell the Tweezies?
LAH. La Twizzy. TWIZZY. I think lots of people spell it differently. But how do you know as a parent? There's no way to know. There's no way to know. If you are a working parent, because obviously the parents have some kind of means of making the kind of money. I saw a kid in a fucking Tebema Kuku t-shirt, and I was just like, if I was spending that kind of money on a little, anyway.
Yeah. But they obviously these are delinquents whose parents are bad parents. Again,
I don't know if their parents are bad parents.
Well, yes, they are, because their children are behaving this way. If your kid behaved that way, you know full well that
Gareth,
he would
you are.
he would have all kinds of hell to deal with you. You would
But
tear him to pieces. I know what you're like.
15 years old, 16 years old, and they are in a group. So this is like the all the teenage group mentality. And I remember when I was that young, when I was kind of in grade 10, would that be 10 and 11? Carlton Center. For those of you who are from Joburg, you'll know where Carlton Center is, in the middle of Joburg. There used to be all these things at Carlton Center. It used to, when people used to go to Joburg Center, they used to have a thing on a Friday afternoon called Carlton Jam.
Right.
And also because all the kids who from all the various townships around Joburg took the bus to get to school. And Carlton Center is just down the road from Elof Street, where all the buses from anywhere, all the city buses from anywhere change at Elof Street. So if you were coming from Parktown Boys, you got off on Elof Street at the bus stop for number 66 or whatever, and you could just walk down to and they had this thing. And Carlton Center used to be packed with kids on a Friday, and it was kind of like a youth club of some sort, right? And they had to stop the thing because we all got rowdy and they had to stop. And then Carlton Center was easy. It's got 4 entrances, right? So they had security guards at the door, and they would just say, if you're in a school uniform, they'd say, no, we're not letting school kids in, because that's just how it was. But like a Mall of Africa's got 10 entrances. It's a Saturday. There's no way, other than saying we're not allowing any teenagers unaccompanied into the mall. There's no way that you can stop this.
Well, you can with batons and pepper spray. And as I said earlier, like lock them in the cinema until their parents go, well, where the fuck are my children? And then they can come and collect them. You remember Ben used to say, because these children are now a menace to society. Imagine you are out on date night. You've worked hard all week earning your money. And you have to then you go to a restaurant, you're taking out a girl that you've been fancying for a while, you go and sit down, you're ordering something nice, and then this bunch of gangsters arrives, these kids who are out of control, and they ruin your meal. And maybe you're in the shops, maybe you're walking through the mall, and suddenly you have to get out of the way because there's this colossal gang of Luh Twizzys. I mean, do me a favor.
But
Rubber bullets, I say treat them with the utmost violence and contempt so that they will learn these lessons early. Can you imagine what these people are going to be like when they're older?
Listen here, Carl DeSantos in the comments is talking about the ice rink at the Carlton Center. I mean, that's what teenagers did. There were lots of other things to do. So now all the kids can do is just be at the mall. This is another thing, right?
Yeah.
We've completely...
I don't give a shit. Entertain yourselves. I used to say to my mom, I'm bored as a child. And then she would either say to me, I don't give a shit, or she'd say, go and play outside, or she'd say, read something, do something. And it was the best advice. Congo Chris says that these Luh Twizzys, he says they like to wait until the robot turns green and then they cross in front of heavy traffic. I nearly deliberately ran down about 12 of them yesterday.
Yay! Listen.
These sound like the sort of people who need to be punished immediately without any... Oh, my God. This is driving me crazy, and I don't even have kids. And I wasn't even at Mall of Africa. I can't believe you... can't believe what you're telling me.
Listen here. Gooning is all I have to say. It's a lot.
Ben always says, and has said for the longest time, and I think it's such a valid way of looking at the world, he reckons that when children behave badly, if anyone under the age of 18 behaves in a delinquent fashion and they are antisocial, and that this goes for anywhere in the world, for any kind of antisocial behavior. So it's not just these ones that you're describing now. It's these same chavs in England and all that kind of thing. The parents must be arrested as well. The parents must go to jail because I'm afraid you are in dereliction of duty as a parent. If your kids are behaving this way, you just should not. It's like this kid who's driving around fast on these roads at night. First of all, it's really dangerous for him. And there's going to be, there'll be tears one day because he's going to hit a rock in the middle of the road because, there's always stuff in the middle of the road these days. A tree will fall over or something. And then he will be dead because he's going down these roads like 180 kilometers an hour and they're windy and it's so stupid. And the parents, if they are ignoring it and just kind of pretending it's okay, because I can't believe they can't hear it if I can, then they're being willfully negligent.
What if it's the child of the group admin?
I don't give a shit. Then they can throw me off the group. It'll be a great relief. But I will not just quietly let this go. And someone said in the comments, I'm like the Karen of the neighbor. I'm really not. I'm really not. Never been involved. But this kind of shit, what bothers me is that the other people are messaging me privately saying, "This is who it is. We know who it is," instead of just standing up for themselves and doing it themselves. Like, I have to do this now. I don't
Okay,
have,
so
I don't have any more or less kind of
although
to
you
do.
know what that is, people who do know who the problem is or what the problem is, and are unwilling to stick their neck out and would rather kind of message you to see if you will do something about it. It's a microcosm of the whole country. This is who we are now, South Africa. We're very unwilling to stick our neck out because we don't want to be the one caught in it. We're just like, I'd rather not. I'd rather not be the one to say. But if somebody
Why?
else will do it, because people are cowards.
There we go. You hit the nail on the head. I was waiting for someone to say that. They're cowards. So, you know what? Cowards don't deserve our respect, I'm afraid. This is
But
just,
I'm just saying that this is what we've become as a country. A lot of us are that coward.
so do you want to get really pissed off? So Ryan has found us a video
Oh,
of these Luh Twizzies. You spell it Luhtwizzy. It's not even, I mean, it's the stupidest word ever. So these are the Luh Twizzies. Are you ready? This is them at the Mall of Africa this weekend. Okay. I can't watch any more of that. Arrest the lot of them. So Ryan says that that video is actually from a couple of weeks ago. It's not the latest incident, but there we are. Unreal. I don't even know what to
listen.
say. None of
They
I
have
had
the
no idea.
phones. They have the iPhones and the Samsungs. They have the sneakers.
In
They
other
have
words,
the
in other words,
gear.
these are not like poor disgruntled youth. The children of the poor
No.
people are going to sleep early because they need to get to school via the most complex and expensive ways possible, and they don't have fancy cell phones and fancy clothes. These are rich people's kids.
And that's what I'm saying. It's either rich people's kids or they have parents who are willing to give everything so that they have these things, right? So they have the designer wear, designer sneakers, top of the range cell phones, all of that. That's who these kids are.
Yeah, it's just they're horrible children. Horrible children. JP Russell says, sons and daughters of politicians just
How
acting like they can't all be there.
John
They
Paul,
can't all
how
be
many
politicians.
politicians?
Yeah. But again, Kuningi, right? There's a theme here.
Rusi.
So we've gone on the most circuitous route ever to hear your comments about this hiding a body, rolling up a body in a carpet thing. We've gone everywhere except there. So what was it from Monday's show that you wanted to add there?
It's just so. Of course, because Bad Sisters, I just saw Bad Sisters for the first time, but it's also just something that we're thinking about.
You
Also,
mean
again,
blood? You mean blood sisters or bad sisters? What's bad sisters?
Bad Sisters.
What's that?
It's a mini series about a group of 5 sisters who are trying to kill the husband of one of the sisters. So the husband,
They must have been Luh Twizzies when they were younger.
listen, this show is incredibly well written, very well produced, and this guy that they're trying to kill, if I've never seen a more unlikable character on a TV show ever.
Really?
He deserves to be killed. 3 episodes in, you're clear. Somebody needs to kill this guy. I'm glad these girls are going to do it. And they each have a different reason for wanting to kill this guy, but they all like trying together.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, if if I know people like that, do I know somebody that would be willing to kill someone for me? Or if I killed somebody, would my friends help me hide the body? Because this again is,
I think I've got a short list, probably about three. There are about three people who I know. I know I could call on these three people. First of all, the one is a major gun fanatic. He has more guns than, I mean, they're all legal, they're all licensed, but he kind of collects guns. He's just got a ton of guns. He would always be useful in a situation like this. The other one is a big guy. He's like over 6'5" and he's strong like an ox. And he, drives a big bucky, and he would be extremely helpful in a situation like this. Plus, he's as trustworthy as they come. So those are the kind of people you need. And
but this is
the third one can operate like heavy machinery and fly planes and all that kind of thing. So he'd be useful too if you need to get like out of the country or whatever. So those are the three people I would call. How about you?
But those are also like practical stuff, right? Because this for me is also it's about dependability and loyalty.
Trust.
It's about a
Trust.
person that would come, and I think I have 4 friends. I don't know if we have the physical strength and all of that kind of stuff, but they would definitely, and it's about problem solving, right? It's about solving the big problems.
Right.
Would I be able to call on these people to solve a big problem and trust that they would do it without questioning me or my integrity or liking me less, or because that's also what it's about. And I was like, yeah. And then also, you kind of wonder if you're that kind of friend. If you're the kind of friend that if one of my friends, God forbid, were to kill their husband, would they call me to say, help?
Sure.
Because Dr. Nandi is definitely that kind of girlfriend.
Yeah. Oh no, she's one of those. She wouldn't even fetch her kids. She'd be so busy and so willing to help you. She'd be like, "Yeah, I'm there. Don't worry about that. I'm on my way. Get the shovels ready." You know.
Totally. Somebody asked if they're more unlikable than Joffrey in Game of Thrones, and the answer is an emphatic yes.
Well, I've got the article here from Ryan. He found the article on Times Live. So here's what you need to know, according to them, about the Luh Twizzy trend by Unati Nkanjeni, who says teenagers identifying themselves as Luh Twizzy have been causing chaos at Gauteng malls, with scores calling on the police to arrest them, including me. Joburg's Mall of Africa has been trending this week after being inundated this weekend with TikTok teenagers. Apparently, it's a trend on TikTok. That's where it starts. You see, TikTok should also just be banned. Described by one teen as another level of skr kids. I mean, this is not even English. This whole article is just completely nonsense. Described by one teen as another level of skr kids, Luh Twizzy appears to have morphed from fans of American rapper Yeet. Do you know who Yeet is?
I do.
Okay. The star's music and lifestyle influenced other artists in TikTok. So what is his lifestyle? Going with his friends to malls and causing chaos. Is that his lifestyle?
Chaos.
I mean, this word lifestyle is just lost all meaning.
There's also, so there's music linked to this thing. So they have a very distinctive way of dressing. They have this distinctive music that they're all into, and it's a gang.
And they need a distinctive can of whoop ass opened on them by their mothers. That's what they need. So those who have associated themselves with Luh Twizzy have stormed malls and then left. One social media user said that there are two groups within the trend's local movement that cannot associate with each other. So they're like gangs. One video shared online at the weekend, teenagers could be seen packed into an elevator. In another, teenagers can be seen walking through the mall and running through the outdoor restaurant areas. Shoppers go about their business. The mall takeover saw teenagers clad in black with skeletal prints out, inspired by Yeet. Aesthetic vision boards dubbed Luh Twizzy outfits have gone viral on platforms like Pinterest. It is said the rapper who raps about cars and money has no link to these teens. The youngsters are mostly in high school and apparently roam around drinking and or smoking weed. Apparently they did this at Monte Casino before. Sarah Hoffman, who is a digital parenting expert, we've had her on the show, and co-founder of Clicked, told Times Live the same thing happened in Pretoria, in Protea Glen. They almost always hide their faces in the TikTok posts. The drivers of this behavior are not really clear. A lot of this is mob psychology based. Well, they're just doing what the adults are doing. We know how many adults are mob psychology based, right? Being the adults.
It
It's
is.
unbelievable. So I'm with Peter Koenig here, who says ban TikTok. Yes, I mean if they can do it in America, we can do it. Send in the Luh Twizzys to do Pumi's dirty work, says Matthew. Shit. Something else.
Oh, Matthew. At this point, the
Okay.
only person that's in danger of being murdered by me is my own teenager.
Yeah, right. Graham Rogers says, Gareth, when is your interview with Simon Sebag Montefiore coming out? I need some mental stimulation after watching those delinquents ransacking malls. It's on Wednesday. We will have the interview with Simon Sebag Montefiore. It was a really interesting conversation. He's just terrific. There's also another great interview coming out about the Zulu Wars in KwaZulu-Natal in the mid 1800s, for those people who are interested, with an author called John Laband, who has gone to a huge amount of trouble to speak to people who've carried the oral tradition over. He's gone and read the source documents again. He's looked at all of the evidence, and he's made a very, very detailed and careful assessment of what actually happened between 1837 and 1840. Very precise period in which he's looked at Dingaan, Pande, and all of that stuff. So if you're interested in that, that's coming up in another week from now. But next week will be Simon. So look out for that one. Very, very cool. Just quickly, one other. Please don't ban any social media sites. It lets the idiots stand out. They always record themselves. At least it leaves evidence.
This is true. Because the other person this week, right, yesterday, was do you remember the guy with the Woolworths basket of stuff, putting it into the back of his Mercedes Benz in the July riots in 2021?
Oh, yes, I do.
He was in the court. He was in front of the manch yesterday. And he pled guilty. What is he going to do? There's video evidence of him running out with them. Like, video evidence.
Well,
the poor guy's life is completely ruined for a basket of Woolworths meat.
This is it. And he probably deserves it. But then the other person who's thankfully been stupid enough to record all their stupidity is this person, who's the trance shooter of all those kids in this Christian primary school in Tennessee. So look at this. This is what the idiot posts themselves. Now they're dead, and it's a good thing that they're dead. Let me read it to you. This is the person who shot up the school, right? And then they shot them in the head because it's a them. Kill Christ cucks, behead Christ cucks. I don't know what a Christ cuck is because I don't speak trance, but I imagine it's like some kind of anti-religious thing. Roundhouse kick a Christ cuck into the concrete. Slam dunk a Christ cuck baby into the trash can. Crucify filthy Christ cucks. Defecate in a Christ cuck's food. Launch Christ cucks into the sun. Hashtag Trans Day of Vengeance. And there's a picture of this person with a rifle, and there's a pistol on their hip as well. They're wearing a jacket. They've got ammo all over them. This is the person who the police killed when they went into the school, and obviously they managed to kill a few people as well, kids, innocent children, which is just unspeakably horrific. But again, this is their post from just a few days ago, so they're dumb enough to let us know what they think and take them at their word. I mean, this is a person who's filled with anger, and hatred, and I just find it absolutely astonishing that people are so psychopathic that they will record this kind of thing. They'll actually make a post like this with a photograph of themselves with a trans flag in the background. And then there are people in the media who are saying to me, oh no, but you're making a big deal about the fact that they're trans. But this person is telling us why they did what they did. You know, it's like if a right-wing lunatic decides to kill black people, they tell you. Their posts are like, I hate them black people, N-word, N-word, N-word. Then you must take them at their word. You know their motivation. They're telling you, this person is dead now. We have to take their word for why they did it. Because we're always going, why? Why does this happen? People go, it's because of gun laws. I'm like, no. They're telling you why they're doing it. They're racist, or they're fundamentalist religious nuts, or they're trans activists, or whatever they are. But take them at their word. They're not hiding the ball. This post of this lunatic, psychopath monster, they're telling you what they think here. Again, another example of terrible, terrible parenting.
Jeez. Okay, so before it's 7:00 and we have to go to the break. So if anything, if you are a parent to a teenager and you're not sure if your teenager is a Luh Twizzy, what you have to look out for is all those black outfits with skeletal pictures.
So if your kid is wearing a lot of black outfits when they go out to
with
the mall,
skeletons.
Yeah, right.
Yeet is so just like look up Yeet and listen to that music. Is that what your teenager is looking for? Listening to
YEAT. And if your kid is, chain them to the fucking wall.
Oh, guys,
It's
a lot. It's a lot, guys.
She's going to find us pictures of what these outfits look like for next week's show.
I'm just saying, good evening, people. So be aware. Be like, this is no time to be sleeping on the job.
All right. So there we are. There's a lot to chew on this morning, and we're only halfway through the show. Coming up next, the burning platform. Stick around for that and a bunch more.
On the other hand, parents often, when they're doing family photos, they would notice that one of the children, for example, would have an eye that was deviating off the central line. And they would then say, okay, my child has got an issue. And they will often say it's a lazy eye. That's a colloquial term for a squint. And they would then go and seek help. So that's normally when children would be either referred to an optometrist or go through the optometric assessment. In terms of adults, a lot of adults would basically, once they start reaching their 40s and they start developing presbyopia, which is the sort of long arm type syndrome where you have to hold things further away to see.
Okay.
They would go to Clicks or Discam and they would buy reading glasses, and they would probably function quite well with those glasses. However, that's probably the right time for you to go and see an optometrist for a couple of reasons.
The T Health Show, your medical lifestyle podcast, brought to you by the T Clinic.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
What car brand loses the fastest value? What do you think is the brand in South Africa specifically that loses the value the fastest?
What car brand loses value the fastest? In South Africa, and I think this is country to country.
Yeah, for sure.
It depends on the market. And I would say in South Africa, if I had to kind of like look at, I suppose I'm a little bit biased, not biased, but because we look at the data all the time, usually it's the French brands for some reason. Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Right. Do not.
Are willing to like railroad the kids into behaving the way that they want them to.
We're back. Pumi's busy
Hello?
talking about railroad kids. Did you just say it out loud that you are willing to do all kinds of terrible things to the kids to get them to behave?
No, I'm just saying there are places out there who will do all kinds of terrible things to get kids to behave in the way that they want them to. Is that Gabriel walking in and out of his what is he?
Gabriel, what is going on with you? He's
Sorry.
What are you doing?
I'm trying to arrange my life.
Okay.
I'm in an Airbnb, so it's not my usual studio setting.
Okay. We wondered.
Aha.
Looks very disorganized there, but it's fine. We're happy to have you on. So here it is, everybody. You've been waiting a week for the Burning Platform, and now it is time. Burning Platform, Pumi Mashigo and Kanthan Pillay are with us, as always. And this morning, Gabriel Crouse, of course, a writer and analyst at the Institute of Race Relations. He does a lot of field work, qualitative and quantitative analysis, and he focuses on things like land reform. He's got lots to talk about. I often get your newsletters, and I often see your reports, and I've thought for the longest time we've needed to get you on the show, Gabriel, because people always want to hear what you have to say. And we're going to talk about some of those things that you've been writing about lately. But let's just let you and Pumi and Kanthan all just vent about whatever it is this week has grabbed your attention. And then we'll start with that, and then we'll get on to the specifics of, election research and some of the other stuff you've been involved in. Kanthan,
I want to pile into Gareth for starters, because Gareth was going on this morning about parents needing to be disciplined for not disciplining their kids.
Yes.
Yes. Now, this is the same Gareth who says that parents are not allowed to bliksem their kids. Am I correct?
No, you're completely wrong. I say you should be able to bliksem your kids.
All right. Okay. Because I think in the absence of parents being allowed to bliksem their kids, how the hell do they teach their kids that violence is not an acceptable option?
So, Kanthan,
violence to teach them that violence is not an option.
Listen, okay, one of the reasons why, and understand this is all about biology, okay? Particularly in terms of boys. When you're growing up, if you are an unruly boy and you actually do not have a well-intentioned male figure that's actually going to set you straight, you are going to cause cuck.
Yes.
And the issue that we have right now is that the overwhelming majority of males in our country are brought up by single mothers. And they do not have strong father figures to actually whip them into shape.
And they can't bliksem them.
Yeah,
as a dude who was brought up by a single mother, I got to say, a good warm clap from mom can also go a long way.
Yeah, well, there used to be a time when, and Pumi, you'd know about this, okay? The mothers who have unerring accuracy with a shoe, that they'd be able to flip it across the room and it'd go, and it would clap the person. See, you know what I'm talking about. Were you on the receiving end of this?
I know nothing about that. Yeah. My mother never threw shoes.
Yeah, by the way.
But I just want to take issue with the issue with single mothers. You see, the thing about a strong male figure in your life, for both girls and boys, by the way, does not necessarily have to be a father. It can be a grandfather. It
Quite
can
right.
Be an uncle,
In my case, it was a grandfather, but I did not say it was a father.
No,
I did say.
But you did say single mothers, implying that a husband.
And I said that they are brought up without having that strong male figure in their lives. Don't take my words out of context, Pooh.
Single mother, you imply the
Second
lack
thing
of
is,
a husband.
Gareth, going back to you, Tuli Madonsela should be locked up.
Why?
Because her son stole her BMW and crashed it.
Right, so she should be locked up. Yeah,
exactly. By your reasoning. And
so first of all, I just want to know why you think I would be against parents being able to clap their children from time. I've never ever intimated even anything close to that.
I've
Like
clearly misread you, Gareth.
I was
So you're a
given
child
cups.
abuser, are you?
No, I was given cups as a kid, and it's a fine line, right? I mean, like
It is a
out of
fine
the
line.
four of us, the two of you who are parents, it's a difficult thing to work because
Yes.
you don't want to be an abusive monster dragon of a parent, but at the same time, you don't want your kid to be an absolute antisocial misfit because they've never been disciplined at home. So it's a very hard thing to do.
No, but I think like the state, right? The parent actually has a monopoly, and it is the threat of violence. It does not necessarily have to be the violence that is a deterrent.
Pumi, you're
like
absolutely
a
right.
state.
But a threat that cannot be followed up on becomes utterly meaningless.
Right.
But
And-
you know,
and that is-
I'm having a flashback to when my eldest daughter and my nephew were kids. They're the same age, and my nephew had caused some cuck, and my brother then went up to him and said, "Okay, what the hell did you do that for?" And my nephew, around about 7 at the time, and he says, "Look, you might as well clap me and get it over with."
But that's a kind of personal responsibility and accountability we don't see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
in a lot of adults.
And of course, there were my brother and I trying to be the stern father figures, you know, just kind of, but wanting to crack up at the same time.
I do want you all to know that Kanthan's other daughter is sitting across from me. And,
okay.
and she's unimpressed with her own father and all his talk of violence.
Ooh.
All right, so what do you want to get off your chest, Pums? And then Gabriel, it's your turn. Luh Twizzy's for me?
No, I have
Finished.
got the that part of what I needed. As I say, even you will see, even in this burning platform, all the things that are going on today. So today we're also holding our breaths as we wait for 1 o'clock when Bongani Baloyi, former DA mayor of Midvaal and former Action SA regional, is a provincial head, Gauteng, is hosting a press conference to tell us now that he has left the Action SA, what he will be doing next. So we're waiting with bated breath. You will see even in this show, kuningi guys, happening 9 o'clock this morning. There is, I've already alluded to this, there is also a press conference. I don't know when we're supposed to work. South Africa is like every single moment of every single day. There is so much for us to pay attention to that I don't know when we are supposed to work, which is why our economy is in the doldrums. Because
we're the laptop class. We don't work.
What's the 9 o'clock press conference if Baloy's at 1?
G4S, the private, the operators of the private prison in Mangaung and correctional services will be giving us. They'll be telling us what's going on. What's going on with Thabo Bester? Did he or did he not die in the fire? Is he the man that is on the run, or is this just a doppelganger? We don't know. So,
well, Slippery Pickle, Carl DeSantis says, I come here to hear about how shit the ANC is. Move on. So maybe, Gabriel, you can...
if he needs a memo to know how shit the ANC is, dude, you know, as Helen Ziller said to me last week, have you been under a rock?
I like it, but it's nice to update fresh ways in which to notice the decline of the country as a result of ANC policy. And I do want to get into that, but I think, since you mentioned Action SA, I think I must say, Herman Mashaba was on the show with you guys a couple of weeks ago. He said the Institute of Race Relations doesn't like him, try to organize the ANC and the DA to get together without him. We've dealt with this all before in writing. It's not true. I think he's a very promising leader. I wish that he would focus his attention on things like the misgovernance of the ANC.
Or his own party with, people like Makosi Kwaza, who left in a temper, Baloy, who's leaving now in a temper. Let's find out why everybody who deals with Herman Mashaba seems to get in the way of his ego, or they seem to argue with each other on this. That's more important than whether or not the IRR is trying to undermine him insidiously from the sidelines, right?
I think that's fair, and I think it's also definitely important to note that at the time when Musi Maimane and Herman Mashaba were inside the DA, the then CEO of the IRR actually went out of his way to try and argue for Musi to stay as leader, and that was a bit hush hush at the time, but it was leaked, and so I'm happy to report it. I actually clashed with my boss at the time because I was like, no, dude, Musi didn't have a great election cycle. Maybe they should have a new leader. He was like, no, keep Musi and keep Mashaba. Anyway, so that's just housekeeping. I think on the prison break story, I think it's just. I think it's a little bit worrying that the private sector is. I had an interview on ENCA on Monday about the Thabo Bester scandal and thought it was kind of not surprising, but tricky to my mind that the idea is for G4S to lose its contract. I mean, there clearly have been problems in prison contracting. Bosasa was first implicated in scandalous behavior in 2009. Tom Moyani was the head of the Correctional Services Center at the time and was sort of forced into early retirement because he defended them. Then he went to take over SARS, where he
and the cost defended them, and the cost, which is almost 800 million, is what they get paid almost yearly. 800 million.
Can we talk about shipping these guys to Rwanda, please?
Yeah, like the British should do.
Yeah, exactly.
I once saw Gareth's shirt is the same color as a Rwandese prison uniform.
Really? Is it pink? Bright pink.
Bright pink. I once saw a troop of Rwandese prisoners toiling in the streets, cleaning things up. They're very well disciplined, and none of them ever run away because it'd be the last thing you ever do.
Yeah, they'll shoot them.
Yeah. I think the Zuma, just the Zuma case of that prison break, that's just, to flag something that we worked on. We went to the Supreme Court of Appeals last year to try and argue for his return. And we're kind of sitting in the boat of trying to climb into the Constitutional Court action as well. Because I think between the DA and AfriForum and others who have tried to argue the case, there is potentially a missing link that it would be unfortunate if Zuma manages to get through. And of course, with Dali Mpofu as his advocate, Mpofu is quite good at sort of probing every particular option, sort of shooting with a machine gun through every argument.
Spray and pray.
So we'd like to block one of those off because Zuma, as much as Thabo Bester and whatever, I mean, it's a fascinating story. But the Zuma prison break is by far the most important one in the new South Africa. And it really is a prison break. So may he return.
Why? Why do you think that is a far more important one? I think they're different cases, but I think they're both equally weighty, because the one talks about a system which is, and we love the private sector in this country. Apparently, they're better managed, better run than the government. But here we have a private prison that's managed to lose a prisoner, have a fire and a dead body, and not account for, is it a new body that came into the prison? Is it another prisoner that was killed? And, there are two different cases, but both of them talk about very different issues within this correctional services system. And I don't know if the one is more important than the other.
I think the case for why it's more important is that Zuma was more important, and Zuma remains more important because he was president of the country, and because the protests against his release are what became the July riots. And I'm not at all suggesting that most looters or most rioters were particular Zuma fans, but that was the spark that lit the match. The Thabo Bester thing is not going to get there, and I totally agree. Like, there is a lack of transparency. It's unclear. It seems most likely that G4S is culpable, or that its staff management systems are somehow partly to blame. But I think that one of the things about doing this kind of work is things can sometimes go wrong, and there might be isolatable blame within the company, which could be itself addressed by the criminal justice system. And the company can keep doing its job.
Like, let's look at the disease and not the symptoms here, because The reason that we have to have private prisons is because the government can't run the state prisons properly. When the private prisons are run badly, they should be come down upon with as much fury and vengeance as the state prisons would be. But we must not hold them to a separate standard, because we seem to do this in the country. We always say, well, we expect more of private enterprises because they're more responsible and they're more efficient. But we don't expect that same high standard. It's the same as opposition politics. We've talked about this before. There's a standard because we're so used to the incompetence of the government in every sphere and at everything that they do, that we then have a double standard, and we seem to think, well, everybody else must be held to a higher one. Our fury and our ire should still be directed primarily at the people who didn't do their job, so that the government had to pay 800 million rand to some security company. And believe me, I'm no fan of these security companies. I think they are all way too dangerous and overmighty. And I think that they represent an existential threat to the safety of most South Africans, even if they purport to be looking after us. I think these are well-armed militias.
Private armies
who, if their bosses were less commercially oriented and more oriented towards political subterfuge and or kind of putting their hands on the scales, we may end up with a lot more problems. So I don't like the idea of these big, powerful security companies, but I also don't think that they came about out of nowhere. They came about because the police and the prisons and every other government department are up to shit.
Dude, and look at the army.
Any of you disagree? Any of you disagree on that?
Can I underline just the army point? I kind of think that the 20th of March EFF shutdown, that itself was shut down, would have, there are ways that you could imagine that having gone a bit differently. And one of them is to recall that in February, the South African army nearly was not paid because the servers on which all of their bank details are kept in a bunker underground have air conditioning units and pipes to keep the servers from melting, and that hadn't been serviced. And so the IT guys said, what you need to do is turn off these servers for 3 days so that we can get in there and replace the cooling system. But what that's going to mean is that the 15th of March pay date is going to be missed, and the soldiers are going to miss their pay by 2 days. Oof. Now, soldiers should definitely be able to have to wait 2 days extra for their pay. And I'm not saying that's nice, but the government was so afraid of its soldiers going on strike because of the payday delay that they took the risk of going through with the servers melting, but being able to salvage the situation anyway. Now, it turned, the IT guy said this.
And by the way, all of this is a problem because they can't provide electricity.
Yes, exactly. It's a downstream of load shedding issue. So
again, address the disease, not the symptoms. But yes.
But if you imagine we had like a 30% chance that those servers would have melted, and then the shutdown would have included striking armed forces.
Sure.
Then the only thing to help you maybe would have been the private security companies. And that's not a position anyone wants to be in, where your own army is not to be relied on to protect you, but you have to use an effective private militia. And yes, all of this requires good governance to be addressed. Here's a fun fact about South African good governance that we figured out in our upcoming tax report. South Africa, if you look at the World Bank data, we have I think it's the 8th sharpest rise in the last 20 years in government spending as a proportion of GDP. So in 1999, it was a little under 20%, and now it's a little under 40%. And it's basically doubled. It's just under doubled. And at the same time as hugely expanding the proportion of wealth that's going through government hands to spend, we've also seen the 13th sharpest decline in efficiency of government spending, according to the World Bank. So World Bank tracks like 200 countries and territories, and you put them all in a list, 225 or something. We were ranked in the top 20% in the world in 1999. 2000. And we are now in the middle. So it can get much worse. Government spending in Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, Zimbabwe is much worse than here. But we have gone from the 80th percentile to the 50th percentile. And that rate of decline is the 13th fastest in the world. But if you combine the two, most really, really, really bad countries or bad governments have lost the ability to keep taxing people and spending as much of the economy. South Africa has managed to increase its share of government spending while decreasing its ability to get good work done with that money at the fastest rate of any country in the world over the last 20 years. And I think that's a pretty stunning indictment of the ANC. It's one thing if it was just doing badly, but it's another thing to hoover up more and more and more to do badly with.
So we've got a new mayor of Tshwane. I just want to bring it back to politics because people love a little bit of that and they love the personality politics. There's a new guy in charge in Tshwane. He went up there. He said exactly the right thing. You know, I'm not here to represent my party. I'm here to represent a coalition. Do we hold our breath for this coalition to last? I mean, am I going to be sitting here in another 2 months when they've thrown this guy out and we have more chaos in the Tshwane Metro Council?
Look, probably, Gareth, probably.
Yep.
But I think, we should take these breaks when we can get them. If we get 2 months of good governance out of this, that's a win as far as I'm concerned. It's better than 2 months of non-governance.
Right. Okay.
I think it could last longer. The Tshwane numbers are such that Tshwane versus Benoni, Ekurhuleni versus Joburg. Joburg and Ekurhuleni were always unstable coalitions where the EFF was required more or less to maintain the stability of the coalition. Whereas in Tshwane, the Rainbow Coalition, the DA Coalition, the Wild Dogs, they're often called by the IRA, that coalition could keep going without that. And the secret ballot removal of the mayor and speaker almost certainly included some DA or some Action SA or whatever defectors. That issue does seem to have been dealt with, assuming that it remains dealt with. Cilliers Brink can stay mayor of the capital city. I think that Cilliers is an impressive figure. I've done some interviews with him. I think he's got a sharp mind. I think he knows not to overpromise. But I think that he's got a very heavy task because that city has been effectively run by the DA for a long time with Randall Williams, who I also rate highly, coming up with a bit of a bung auditor's report and a lot of residents saying they're not seeing real improved conditions. The line to remember perhaps is that the road to the union buildings runs through Pretoria. It runs through Tshwane. If the DA-led coalition wants to do well in 2024, it needs to convince ordinary voters outside of the Western Cape that it can deliver there what it's been delivering inside the Western Cape for the last decade plus. The best and only way to do that at scale is in Tshwane. And so I think the next 12 months, if they can keep the leadership, if they can avoid defectors' votes of no confidence, that's not enough. They really need to push the needle. It is the single most important project for opposition politics in the country, I think.
Cool. So not just a mayoral election. All right. It's got to be your dog in the background there, Gabriel.
I was about to ask Gareth if that's your old dog at the neighbor.
No, it's not.
It's definitely not. It's Gabriel's dog. No, but we were, and Kanthan, I would love for you to weigh in on this. We were talking about this on the way into the studio this morning about coalition governments and why suddenly it seems like we're unable to work within a coalition government, especially when our country started its free life in a coalition. Do you all remember the Government of National Unity? What has changed? What has changed that allowed such vastly different political parties back then to be able to work together towards what we all see as a common good?
Well, the Government of National Unity was not a coalition. So that's an important difference that we need to understand. The GNU was actually mandated by the constitution at the time. That was part of the agreements that came out of CODESA. And so that's the reason why you ended up with Thabo Mbeki as first deputy president and F.W. de Klerk as second deputy president, because the proportion of how the ministers and so forth would be allocated was actually agreed upon in CODESA.
But hold on. But, you say it was not a coalition, but theoretically, right? Theoretically, as you say, the proportion of ministers, of portfolio holders was agreed upon. And this is theoretically what a coalition, like a DA-led coalition, an ANC, EFF coalition, any of those things are supposed to be. They're supposed to agree upon who gets what portfolio, who gets to do what, and agree about how it is that they're going to run a particular municipality and how they're going to vote.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that the difference, if you take, for example, what went down in Tshwane, the ability of members of one party to defect to another party and then end up with a situation where a person who formerly did not have any position suddenly becomes appointed as mayor would not have been possible under the government of national unity, because the proportions and in terms of how it was allocated was already determined ahead of time. So that was a legislative process as opposed to an agreement between the political parties. But the crucial thing from my side is the thing that I said. I said this to the DA in late last year, but the only way to prevent a scenario is you need to have financial consequences for people who break coalition agreements. And the financial consequences have to be at a personal level, not at the level of a party. So if
you will know when people do that, they're doing it on principle and they're willing to risk the fact that they're going to lose actual money out of their own account. In other words, if it's free and if it's cheap, like virtue signaling on the internet, then everyone's going to do it at the drop of a hat. There's no reason, there's no incentive not to just act out like a Skotane. We want these people to feel the consequences of their actions. I completely agree.
So you draw up the agreements, and when you draw up the agreements, you put in those financial consequences into the agreements. Now, the reason why Joburg's coalition fell apart and Tshwane's former coalition fell apart is because you had individuals who actually broke the terms of the coalition agreements, even though they had all signed these coalition agreements, at least their parties did.
So the thing is, I think that to go back a step, this is like a political science question that a lot of countries grapple with. And yes, the interim transition constitution set up the government of national unity with the kind of legal binding agreement between parties before the case that made dissolution trickier. There is a strong reason why in a lot of countries, including South Africa, it's difficult, if not impossible, to have legally binding contracts between political parties going into coalitions. Why it might be difficult to set up these kinds of, we can have a contract to build a house, and if you break the contract, you face a financial consequence, and that's how business works. It might not be constitutional to do that. It might be, I don't know, but here's the argument for why it won't be. The abstract argument is that we live in a representative democracy, not a contractual democracy. So when you elect particularly a ward councillor, but also someone who gets picked up off a party list, your idea is you're saying this person is going to be a custodian of my best interests for the next 5 years. And so they should be allowed to play their role according to their conscience. And Gareth is right in saying that, it would be especially nice if people were willing to test their conscience against some material cost. But the law doesn't always make room for that. The law can sometimes say, look, if you're expecting this person to pay their house mortgage, to give up their house in order to vote their conscience, then you're not really allowing them to vote their conscience. The flip side of this is, in a representative democracy, you should know exactly who has cast which ballot. so that you can keep track of whether the elected official is representing your best interest. But we have secret ballots doing these things, which without which the Tshwane situation, I don't think could have happened. And part of the reason that we have secret ballots is the DA's fault. The DA's arguments for secret ballots during the Zuma era in order to try and encourage ANC members to feel courageous enough to vote their conscience to get rid of Gehle Kisa.
And we said at the time it would come back to bite them.
Yes, we did, dude, and it is, and and I see the thing happening again with the DA now trying to push for a constitutional reform so that you can only have one motion of no confidence every year. Well, what happens if we do get a government of a good government, rainbow coalition government in 2024? There's a sneaky vote of no confidence on some kind of secret ballot that's smuggled through a naughty speaker motion, and then you are stuck with an EFF government at national level for a year because you've managed to pull off this thing. Ultimately,
the law of unintended consequences.
Exactly. And the only real way out, I think, to address your question directly, Pumi, the thing that we really need, the biggest difference between now and 25 years ago, is now we are a post-adolescent democracy. And we need to act like a post-adolescent democracy. And that does mean blaming ourselves as citizens. If things aren't going right, we need to, blaming the rules, we need to start looking at ourselves and say, are we voting right? As citizens, face-to-face, friend-to-friend, are we putting the effort to vote? We're running a voting registration campaign. Now's the time to do it. And are you going out and making a meaningful vote that gives a good chance for change? I think that without that, the Constitution, the rules, the contract, nothing's going to save us from ourselves if we don't get our act together in this very basic democratic way.
But it also sounds, just listening to all of y'all, it also sounds like we have bad politicians who don't know how to be politicians, who don't know how to lobby for their, who don't know how to lobby for their ideas, who don't know how to convince people across the floor why their idea is good.
So which country has good politicians?
Yeah.
I think the politics, the dirtiness of politics and the slug fight, because that's what it is. Like, politics basically is a slug fight at any time, at any turn. It's a slug fight for your ideas. It's a slug fight for your policies. And all along the way, you have got to be willing to fight for it hard enough, which means getting the right people to believe in your policies, to vote for you. So getting the people to the voting station to vote for you.
Well,
then when you are a representative.
Virus in the comments, Pumi, has a different take. He says we should just go and dump our spoiled fridge contents in the driveway of Megawatt Park. I mean, that's activism of a kind.
No, but seriously. And then when you have been elected and when you are a representative, in the corridors, doing the work of in the corridors, talking, whipping up the votes, counting the various people and getting them to your side of the table. Look at what happened to Jeremy Corbyn in the UK, right? That is a slug fight. And that's what serious politicking is about as well. It's about more than just saying, just shouting from the benches. And that's what we don't have here. We don't have that. We do have a lot of people on Twitter. We do have a lot of politicians on Twitter blaring these views of theirs out there. But in the moment, in the benches, they're not doing the work.
I want to give an example, a controversial example, perhaps, of what I think is exactly what you're talking about. So I'm in Cape Town now. Part of the reason that I came down was to go and dig around in the Cape Town High Court archives to look back on this case between Busisiwe Mkhwebane and Cyril Ramaphosa and company, right? So everyone, like Mkhwebane, public protector, she's on TV every day with her silly hearing, with her Stalingrad tactics. She should have never been appointed public protector from the moment in 2018 where she tried to order the Constitutional Court to basically allow modern monetary theory to take over the country with hyperinflation. She definitely should have been removed. It's overdue. But there is this weird thing, right, where Ramaphosa finally suspended her 2.5 years after he got the power to do so, exactly 2 days after she asked him 31 questions about Phala Phala. It was very strange timing. What made the timing even weirder was that he suspended her the day before the Western Cape High Court judgment was to come out about whether he had the power to suspend her or whether he had a conflict of interest. So it's like, why not just wait an extra day? What was the problem? And I went into the archives to try and figure out what the arguments were that were made in that case and the case that then came afterwards, where the Western Cape High Court ruled later in September that Ramaphosa clearly acted in haste. He clearly exhibited a strange behavior in doing so.
We know exactly what. Man, you don't have to read tea leaves to know he was acting in his own interests, in his own best interests, and with no prior consideration of his constitutional responsibilities, duties, or even powers. This is an obvious move by a man who's completely self-motivated.
It's stunningly obvious. He had 2.5 years. He says, I couldn't wait a day longer. I was in such a terrible haste. He was in a terrible haste for 2.5 years. He could have suspended her. Anyway, so by the way, he himself said, he swore under oath repeatedly that if there was a case between him and Mkhwebane that was related to conflict of interest, he couldn't suspend her while that litigation was ongoing. In the appeal to the Constitutional Court, he tries to explain, okay, if you yourself have said you can't suspend because there's a conflict of interest if you're busy clashing with each other in court, why did you then suspend her while you were busy clashing at each other in court? He submits there was no pending litigation. I mean, it's a brazen lie. It's like obvious black and white gaslighting. It's absurd. Here's where it gets very irritating to me. The reason Ramaphosa, just an aside, we have submitted a PIA application last year to the new acting public protector to release those 31 questions, his answers to those questions, because we would like to compare his answers to that he gave in July to the answers that he gave to the impeachment commission in October to see if he gave the same answers. If he gave different answers, he's got to go. If he gave the same answers, well, that might help his case. Either way, it's important for South Africans to know. The acting public protector hasn't released that information. She said back last year in winter that she couldn't give out his answers because it might damage the investigation. If you give out the witnesses' answers, then other witnesses are going to hear and they can use that to make their stories come right. But it's now like 8 months later, that reason doesn't make any sense. He's given his official version elsewhere. The only thing left. So that makes me worry about the acting public protector's credibility. But the biggest worry to me in a way is the DA. The reason that Ramaphosa, to my mind, has not gotten in more trouble about this particular side of the Phala Phala scandal, the side of removing Busisiwe Mkhwebane 2.5 years too late, but 1 day too early for it to make any sense, other than as self-interested nonsense, is that the DA stood up to defend him in court. They said that what he did made perfect sense. This guy was acting in the most reasonable possible fashion. You can't second guess him. And I've got some sympathy for them. They have spent, Glenys Breitenbach, MP Mazzotti, they have really gone the distance in going after Busisiwe Mkhwebane. And partly you can understand how they didn't want to turn around and say, okay, we'll put her back in her job. But also, they themselves have submitted, and every lawyer that I've asked about this has said, there's clear precedent where you can say the suspension exhibited a conflict of interest, but the remedy should not be to put her back in her job because clearly she's got to go. The remedy should be to uphold the suspension for another 30 days while someone else is put in place to suspend it.
I'm led to believe by all the political punditry that I see around me and by people who call themselves Professor X or Y on TV that the IRR is always on the side of the DA. So how could you possibly be saying these things?
No, man. Dude, I think the DA has screwed the pooch. I think that the DA could have put Ramaphosa in a position to be found guilty of constitutional misconduct by the Constitutional Court, which would have been a far more damning finding than the panel report, which would have forced Parliament once again to face the issue and would have exposed the ANC as so brazenly unconstitutional that when the highest court in the land says this guy acted unconstitutionally, they're still going to vote not to impeach him. That might have triggered an early election. That might have given the DA the best possible momentum that they could have wished for to go into the 2024 election ready to win, ready to govern, ready to lead a coalition that could actually replace the ANC. Instead, they stood up for Ramaphosa. They banded the lager together. There's a lot of and ah about whether they want to get in bed with the ANC and govern together with the ANC rather than with other partners going into 2024. I don't think the ANC particularly wants to get in bed with the DA. I think that Frans Cronje, my old boss, he made the call over the weekend that there's going to be stage 0, 1, or 2 load shedding going into 2024. And I think that's a very interesting call. I know that he's basing it on some investigations he's done of the coal fleet and parts of it that he thinks are much more ready to go than we sometimes are given to believe. And if the ANC does that on the polling that his foundation does, that the IRR does, I think the ANC is back in the position where it can get a 50% majority all on its lonesome. And then we're back in the world where maybe with the EFF and a couple of rats and mice parties, they can get a 2/3 majority. We can think about amending the constitution all over again, just as Ramaphosa has been talking about the last 2 weeks. And hey, guys, the most exciting thing about South African politics is it's a soap opera that repeats itself again and again and again. Malena comes back from the dead every season, and so does the ANC. And part of the thing is that the DA has not gone for the jugular.
And Gabriel, you've actually cut to the chase now around the argument that I was having with Helen Ziller last week, because the only way you prevent that scenario is by getting people who couldn't care to vote to actually go to the polls and vote. And the only way in which you're going to have a scenario where the ANC is getting more than 50% is if those 11 million people who didn't vote actually don't vote. And it's a very real scenario that you're talking about. And if people would actually shift their focus onto those undecided voters, then we've actually got a real chance of salvaging something. But yes, the scenario that you're painting is bleak, but I think it's very likely. But here's something else I'd like to just toss out, guys, for something for you to consider. All right. And maybe it's just a different way of looking at things. Consider that the ANC itself right now is in fact a coalition. Within itself. Okay, it's a coalition of people that actually they serve different masters, they have different agendas, but they have all come together to rule this country simply because of the fact that they want to retain power, which is why they are so dysfunctional, because they are all pulling in different directions. And Ramaphosa is very happy to just sit back there and allow the dysfunction to actually continue. And is there a way to actually force that coalition to pull itself apart? I think that's the question that we should be looking at.
That's the best hope. In the absence of good opposition politics, South Africa's last best hope for a good result in 2024, perhaps, is the last standing honorable members of the ANC finally recognizing that we have the world's highest recorded unemployment rate. We have the world's worst public education system on a bang-for-bang basis. We have the fastest growing government when ratioed with its decline in effectiveness. We have the world's highest minimum wage to median ratio, meaning we've got, just the craziest anti-poor labor policies. We're doubling down on BEE through the Employment Equity Amendment Bill, Discam-style moratoria, the government drive for expropriation without compensation. There's a lot of stuff that good, honorable ANC members who were in the struggle and who just wanted a center-left kind of amicable kind of form of good governance, they have a lot to feel ashamed about. And if they jump the wagon, as we saw some people have already done, but if the big leaders, someone between Enoch Godongwana, Tita Mboweni, Katlema Motlanthe, Thabo Mbeki, if any of those guys can jump ship, Trevor Manuel, and try and take a bit of a crew with them, they might be able to say, we're the true ANC. That coalition that's left is a bunch of venal or incompetent self-servers. And we would like to lead the DA, Action SA, Vryheids Front Plus, ACDP, and the IFP into the new third age of South African politics. That would be very exciting. But I don't think that there's enough pressure for them to want to do that. It's a risky move. Terra Lacorda has, I voted for Cope in 2019. I've got a lot of time for that guy, but Cope has done very, very bad.
Gabriel, you didn't vote for me. Turn Cope.
I did it. But he has shown that it can work out badly. Sorry, go ahead.
So I just want to jump in because earlier I spoke about being at this HSRC research presentation yesterday that they have been doing for the past 20 years, I think, in conjunction with the IEC. So that is independent of any of the political parties. There were lots of political party liaison people there in the presentation yesterday. And it was interesting for me to see. So all the stuff that we already know, right? The declining number of people showing up to vote, to Kanthan's point about concentrating on the people who aren't showing up to vote, is what opposition parties should be doing. Secondly, just talking about the trust that, one of the questions that they did ask is they asked their respondents, their sample, bearing in mind that this is probably since about 1999 that they've been doing this research. So asking them about trust, how many people of their respondents trust the IEC and its independence? Very many people trust that the IEC is doing its job and doing its job well. I make this point because some of the conversation that has been going on in the past probably 18 months, as people and their polling is talking about coalition government possibly being what happens after 2024, is suddenly the political parties are all trying to tell us that the IEC may not be trustworthy, that they're going to allow the ANC to steal the election. And that is a very dangerous place to be. I think where political parties begin to create doubt in the mind of the electorate about the independence of the IEC is really going to create a problem. The same kind of fuck up that secret polling has become for the DA, right? Secret ballots in parliament have become for the DA. But anyway, the second thing, though, which I found very interesting yesterday, is that the electorate trust the opposition parties less than they trust the ANC. So they're not, because of the behavior of politicians, the trust factor in the ANC is sitting at about 26%, and the trust factor in opposition politicians is at 24%. It's a slim margin, but it's a margin to consider that because of the behavior of our politicians.
Isn't that damning? I mean, 26 and 28%. I mean, these are just, or 24 and 26%. These are not numbers. I mean, when you talk about confidence and trust, that means that only 2 out of every 10 people trust any of these motherfuckers.
Well, you've got to be a little bit careful, right? Because opposition parties is lumping.
Yeah, sure. You're putting, Herman Mashaba, Julius Malema, you're putting John Steenhuisen, you're putting Mangosuthu Buthelezi. But obviously, it's a lot more complicated. But still, politicians in general cannot get more than 2 out of 10 South Africans to actually take notice of them and trust them. Unbelievable.
I'd be interested to know what the figure is for journalists, though.
Oh, they do actually have that. Unfortunately, I left the report in my car, but they do also have that. They do also have trust in media. So trust in the media, and there was quite a strong sentiment that mainstream media favors the ruling party over everybody else. So, and we know that now. We've been watching them. We've been watching them with Cyril Ramaphosa and the kid gloves with which they treat him. So, I mean, I think that it's not unwarranted that people feel that media is unfairly biased.
So, guys, I just, Gareth, one of the things that Gabriel had put on his list was the talk that he gave to the EU delegates in Feb, the Digital Disinformation Conference. And I'd really like to hear a bit more about that. I don't know about you guys.
Definitely. Go ahead, Gabriel.
Sure, thanks. Thanks to the Spanish and German embassies for hosting this talk and the EU delegates and whatnot. And I mean, as an aside, it was interesting to see Max Dupria, Peter Bruce, representing and others representing the mainstream media. It was an interesting day. the talk that I gave was basically about what I brand audaciously as the science of the 21st century. You can call it Kudonomics. Basically the idea is, I got this from a Princeton professor that I studied under, Philip Pettit, who wrote a book called The Economy of Esteem. He observed that for the last 2,500 years, across 3 continents where people have been writing things down about observing philosophy, human nature, they've tended to bucket 3 different kinds of social desires: the desire for power, the desire for property, and the desire for prestige, or the positive regard of others. And the first 2 have become institutionally, quantitatively well-studied topics of human interaction. Politics, political science, is the study of the pursuit of power, the patterns of behavior that emerge from that. And economics is the study of the patterns of behavior that come from pursuing property. But the third kind, what we do when we pursue likes, that is not well studied. Sociology, anthropology, there are interesting stories that we tell, but there's nothing like a quantifiable analysis. Part of the reason for that is we didn't have a way to quantify likes until Facebook or the internet, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Now we can quantify it. Here's why we're not quantifying it. Here's why there is not a growing industry of academics, think tanks, and so on, really studying how we get along, how trends work in a robust academic way. It's because the social media companies are not releasing the data. Now, the story at Facebook is that they used to make it pretty free to access their API, which is the kind of data you need to do this analysis. Then Donald Trump won the election. And the meme was, one of the memes was, and there's certainly some truth to it, that Cambridge Analytica had been able to use this information, metadata, about how people interact in order to create more targeted political campaigns that gave him a bit of an edge. What was often forgotten, and what was clear to me as a silly thing to forget, was that Obama, when I was in America in his campaign against Mitt Romney, was doing exactly the same thing. And at that time, the New York Times thought this was a great development in democracy. When Trump did it, they thought this is the end of democracy. And so they supported Facebook in taking their API down. Twitter, in February, while we were doing the conference, took its API and put it behind a paywall too. So I was there with like a dozen leaders of tech companies from Spain, America, Canada, South Africa. And all of these guys are kind of sitting in the position where they've been analyzing trends. They've been analyzing the illicit trade in human beings, the illicit ferrying of people across borders. They've been, human trafficking. They've been analyzing how toxic anti-immigrant memes spread in parts of Africa, and they've been able to do this using Twitter API. And they can't do this anymore, or their business model needs to change a bit because of the new paywall. And if it gets worse, the paywall is going to be replaced by a hard barrier, by, apply to the CIA, apply to the FBI, apply to some government agency to see the data. You can't just get it for free, or you can't get it openly and transparently. So my argument is that we need to live in a world where more information is what we use to combat disinformation. We can't rely on government censors to do it for us. That is a nightmare. Think about the people who ran the COVID lockdown now, continuing to decide what gets to be heard or not. It's a very terrible idea. We need more information. And in particular, the information we need is the aggregate patterns of behavior. We need the kinds of data that you can create GDP analysis, levels of analysis for the esteem economy. And I think that the technical legal solution is that the trade secrets framework within which social media companies, maybe some insurance companies, and things like ChatGPT, AI companies, trade secrets needs to be replaced with patent law and trademark law, so that they can put out their algorithms and they can put out their metadata, and think tanks, academics, journalists, interested dudes who do podcasts can all go and look at that stuff, see the patterns, talk about it, help us all kind of improve our bullshit detectors by seeing, oh, this thing is trending, and you can see a little bit like why it's working. If you see why it's working in a fashion sense, that's going to help insulate you from the merely fashionable quality and disambiguate that from the truthful quality on your own terms, and you're using your own noggin with more information to do so. So it needs to be protected. They need to be able to give out their trade secrets without losing to the competition. Other people can't just photocopy it. That's what patent law is for. And the metaphor that I used, I'll close with this, is that 2,500 years ago, Socrates said that there's this new technology on the wing. It's called writing things down, and society is never going to survive this. He was like, yes, the youth are going to get so rude, and people aren't going to put in the effort to engage nicely because they're just going to write things down, then they're going to forget it in their heads. He said civilization can't survive writing. And the same thing was said about the printing press, about the radio, about the television, and then about the internet. The solution in each and every occasion hasn't been censorship. It's been more transparent use of the new technology. And the use here has to be transparent metadata.
I can't think of a better way to end than on Socrates. I mean, that's pretty much full circle.
I do want to say, though, that one of the things you talk about our bullshit detectors having more access, it's going to allow us to refine our bullshit detectors. Having just spent the past week on Mid-Journey, I don't know how we're going to, especially here in South Africa, which is why I started out talking about Kuningi, right? I don't know how we're going to that quickly wrap our heads around all that we have to wrap our heads around in order to have our bullshit detectors kind of refined towards being able to tell what's real and what's not, especially when we are currently sitting in a situation where we don't even know if prisoners escaped or not. I'm just saying.
It's an arms race. The bullshit is definitely winning the arms race against the bullshit detectors. There's so much of it around. And it's not going to be easy to reverse that, but you have to start. We all have to keep doing it every day.
I mean, again, I'm just going to say that the best news is that we've got an electricity minister. He's going to solve all of our problems. So stop worrying. You're all panicking for nothing.
Dude, he might not be so bad. By the way, have you guys read the Just Energy Transition? We are guaranteed in South Africa. We have promised to cut our coal emissions in half by 2030. We're decommissioning plants left and right. I think that if he has started by saying there was a plant that was going to be decommissioned by 2035 that he now wants to contract out to be extended. If he says, stuff you to the Americans, we're going to auction off all of those plants that are set to be decommissioned by 2030. If private sector companies want to pay the money to help us as South Africa pay down our debt, and they're going to invest in making it work again, and they're going to burn coal. I am kind of pro-green, but not in South Africa. I don't think we should be going from coal load shedding to sunflower load shedding. We must get rid of load shedding first. So if these guys want to sell those plants and let the private sector come in and add some gas to our future, that's absolutely fabulous. I'm ready to, dude. So if the ANC wants to govern this country nicely, then I will give them lots of credit for it, and that's a potential way that he could do it.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you, Kanthan. Thank you, Pumi. Thank you, Gabriel. And most especially, thank you to you for joining us on the Burning Platform today. You can find out more by subscribing to Gabriel's newsletter. Should you like to do so, find him at the Institute of Race Relations, the IRR. They're on the internet, and you can find them anywhere you type it in on Google. All right, we'll catch up next week. Everybody, have a happy day. Cheers.